I lay in bed with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, while I thought of the day when today was actually a dream. It was a breezy afternoon when Stephen picked me up from my studio apartment in Glendale. I studied psychology at the state university, while Stephen studied history. We planned to trek up the Camelback Mountains and then sit for a quiet picnic in the wilderness. It was already sunset by the time we trekked down the mountain and spread the mat we had gotten. Stephen bent down to unfurl the corners, or so I thought, and instead he had pulled out a ring. Even though dirt covered his face and his clothes stank of sweat, he had never looked better. And I'd never had a more beautiful moment in life, so of course I said yes. Not all of my friends had been as thrilled as I'd imagined them. They wanted me to take more time to get to know Stephen. They believed there were a lot of things I should know about Stephen before deciding to spend my life with him. I had voiced their doubt to Stephen, and he had simply said that we would find out everything about each other slowly as we lived together as a married couple. I pushed away the blanket and got out of bed. I washed up and walked to the noisy, mostly full dining room. My family and friends had filled every corner of the house. "Here comes the bride!" I gave him a cheeky smile as I sat on the dining table. While everyone applauded, my mom served me a full plate of everything she could find that fit the tag of breakfast. I widened my eyes. "You need all the energy you can today. I also need to fit in my dress." I smiled at her as I emptied half of my plate. The rest of the day disappeared in laughter, chatter, and a lot of wedding preparations. I sat in a high makeup chair as our hired makeup artist blended the last streaks of foundation with my skin. My friends helped me fit into my dress, while my family waited in the living room in anticipation. I stepped out of the room and it was just as I had imagined it to be. My family exclaimed and broke into cheer. I walked to the car while I heard the murmur of praises. My dad drove us to the park we had planned our wedding in. I saw the aisle decorated in white roses and Stephen's family and friends already seated on the chairs. I took a deep breath and took my dad's arm as I walked the aisle, and everyone stood up. I noticed Mary and Willie on the back chairs as I was walking. They were both Stephen's ex-girlfriends, and I had no idea they had been invited. I decided to ignore their presence. I could ask Stephen about it later. Perhaps they had shown up on their own to stir something up. I was aware that people can be very petty at times. Stephen smiled at me as we got nearer and gave me his hand. My dad gave him a hug, and I took his hand. As we were at a small stage, I noticed Cecilia, Karen, and Benny more in the crowd of people. All three of them were Stephen's exes. While the priest took his spot between us, I whispered to him, "Why are your exes here?" "I invited them. Thought they'd have a good view." I narrowed my eyes at him as the priest began the ceremony. After a long sermon on the significance of marriage, it was finally time for us to begin our vows. The priest asked Stephen to go first. "Mary, Cecilia has changed my life." I stared at him while the crowd went from silence to a soft murmur. He realized that he took the wrong name. Sorry, I'm just nervous." "So, Benny, no. Willie, I'm sorry. Let's take a short break." I walked away from Stephen towards my bridesmaids, who held out their arms. I watched five girls get up from their seats and the crowd turned towards them, watching them leave as they gave me a sad smile. Stephen walked to me and kept his hand on my shoulder. I gently shrugged off his hand. "What's wrong with you?" "You came up and reminded me of them. It made me lose my train of thought." "So it's my fault?" "No, that's not what I mean." "Why did you even invite them here?" "I didn't think it was a big deal." "Just give me a moment to myself, Stephen." I walked off the stage and my sister followed me to a corner. One of my guests got me a chair and I sat down to take a few deep breaths while my sister got me a glass of water. "Nia?" "Sorry, this isn't a good time." "It's important." "Do I know you?" "No, I'm Monica." I wasn't in the mood of acquaintance, so I raised my eyebrow. "I wasn't invited here. Not intentionally, at least." "Then why are you here?" "Stephen forwarded me the address to this place by mistake. I found out that it's a popular wedding venue and also found out that Stephen was getting married through some common friends 2 days ago. He forwarded me the address by mistake. I am Stephen's ex. We just broke up last Friday. What? I'm sorry. I should have come forward earlier, but I decided to come here at the last moment. I wanted to make sure you knew about me and Stephen, but I saw the whole preparation here and you walked in, and I decided that I would just let it be and leave as soon as I could without disrupting anything. But I just witnessed the ceremony and I couldn't just keep this hidden from you before you both are really married. I'm sorry, Nia. She put her hand on my hand gently as I tried to breathe. It felt like all the blood had rushed to my head, and I was going to faint. My sister kneeled down next to me and held my shoulders, trying to calm me. I looked at my family and his family, everyone mingling and chatting. I felt a rage surge through me. I walked back to the stage in a confident stride, and everybody settled down as I stepped on the stage. I went to the priest and told him I'd like to start. He cleared his throat on the mic and the crowd went silent. I saw Monica standing next to the chair I was sitting in. She looked pale as she stared at me. I have known Stephen for the last 8 months. People would say that that's not enough time for us to have taken the step, but we decided we would just know each other throughout our marriage. However, what I didn't expect was to find so much about him on the day I was going to marry him. Stephen invited his 5 exes to our wedding and then he blamed me for asking him about them. He forgot my name while trying to read his vows. Not only all this, he invited Monica to his wedding. Monica over there by that aloof chair. She was his girlfriend until a week ago. Yes, week. That's while we were engaged and busy preparing for today. When I was writing my vows, I kept trying to think of why I wanted to marry him. It was really hard, but today it was so easy to list out why I didn't want to marry him. By the end of my speech, everyone had stood and my dad looked at me, frantically trying to make sense of what was happening. I took off my ring and cupped Stephen's palm and dropped the ring there. I got down the stage and walked towards our car, while my parents and friends rushed to my side. I sat in the car and my dad, without uttering a word, drove away to our house. At home, I got out of the car and rushed into my room. I slipped out of my wedding gown and threw it to the side. Then I buried myself into my bed and cried for a long time. It took me a long time to get out of the habit of burying myself in my bed. I had to convince myself every day that it wasn't my fault and I had nothing to be ashamed for, but it was still difficult for me to face everyone who had attended the wedding and seen it break apart. My family and friends tried to be as supportive as they could, but there are some things only time heals, and time did heal me. Time did heal me. I had humiliated Stephen publicly, and even his family was having a difficult time forgiving him for everything he had done. He took a year off from the university as people kept critiquing his actions, including the professors who had found out. He eventually transferred his course to another city and moved there permanently to avoid facing everyone here. When you do wrong things, they follow you everywhere like a dark shadow, and it's hard to get rid of a shadow. Stephen had learned this the hard way.